Hey friends, I got an email yesterday from a listener to Self Command, my productivity audiobook. Had a few questions, and I think these are probably pretty general. I mean, obviously I'm going to anonymize, not going to mention the person, but I bet they're relatable to a lot of other people out there, so I thought I'd just share some of the same thoughts I had in response to this listener. And so, general message here, found the program Self Command last night, listening to it. Loved the idea of a single focused task and writing something you want to achieve on a whiteboard and started doing it. Has a greater issue, though, that would make it hard to get there, right? Learning programming for web development, JavaScript and React, wants to go into teaching. We kind of skip a few ahead here. And the struggle and procrastination comes from, 1, lack of belief that the person can do it. 2, too much information, doesn't know where to start. And 3, doesn't know, what would most impact others, right? To help others if they learn it. And so skipping here to kind of my response. And again, there's some more message there, but personal details and things. So first off, obviously, thank you for checking out Self Command is how I start this. And then we kind of just kind of go through some steps here. And these are a little chaotic. I mean, the nature, right? When I receive a high volume of replies to my books, my courses, and so on, can't necessarily reply to every single one of them. And when I do, there's a balance, right, between what I can get an email about quickish versus if I started trying to format it and edit and do it nicely, well, then I couldn't reply to as many people. So this will be a tad chaotic. But basically, step 1, emphasizing that the primary goal at the beginning, whether you're doing web development, JavaScript, React, whether you're doing game development, whether you're doing starting a small business, doing a podcast, content, whatever, the first criteria and success has to be framed as doing it. That you're doing the thing, right? If you want to get fit, step 1 is to be doing exercise, whether it's going for a jog or a walk or the gym. If you want to be writing a book, well, step 1's got to be you're making time when you're actually writing, whether that's drafting or outlining or sketching or what have you. It's doing the thing at all, right? We can't improve at what we're not doing. And we can't even course correct what we don't have motion happening on. So step 1 just becomes, am I doing the thing I mean to do? And I try to emphasize, and this comes from the self-command material, right, of you don't really try to focus so much yet on, how am I going to get all this done? There's so much stuff in the mountain, getting to the top of whatever. Just focusing on, can I get myself to do one step at a time, keep moving forward on it? And if so, when you can demonstrate to yourself, give yourself confidence of, I said I would do this and then I did it. I said I'd do that and then I did it. Even if those aren't ambitious, even if those aren't big yet, even if those aren't complex, or there's not a lot of yield outside of just the fact that I wrote a blog entry, I don't care if anyone saw it, right? I made a video, I don't care if anyone watched it. I made a game, I don't care if anyone played it. It's step 1 is just doing the thing at all, and then that's the momentum you can build off of, including also it's a way to get information. So it leads to our next point with regard to the higher level of choice of which way to move in. There's so many different ways to take things. Basically, it's often really hard to tell for anyone. It's not just a product of being a beginner, it's part of it. It's nobody ever quite knows for you individually what's the best direction to go in. You've just got to kind of try on a lot of shoes to see what fits, right? Try this course, try that programming language, try this thing. And it can feel like, am I using time inefficiently? Am I being wasteful? And the reality is no. Because nobody but you can tell which one of those fits your personal strengths, your way of thinking, the moment in time and circumstance of you, your connections, your niche in the market, your relationships, who you can find, the opportunities that show up on your radar. No one in history, in the past, or even in the present, can tell you but you. And so the only way to do that is to try a few on, to start a few, see how it's going, and then from that, make an informed choice of either I've got clarity now and this worked for me or it didn't. And you can move on with confidence that, okay, well, that one didn't work for me. This also ties back to, I mentioned maybe like to teach someday. That sort of exploration really is beneficial there's lots of pathways I started in life, got enough information to be like, okay, well, this isn't for me. But that's helped equip me in helping other people navigate their choices and their career decisions between big companies, small companies, venture-backed, startup, and solopreneuring and other stuff, because I can help compare and contrast to things I've learned from peers in those communities or things that I saw from my kind of windows into those spheres for off and on for a few years and so on. And so even if what you've done is you've tried some tutorials and stuff and you know what, this was not a good fit. Either you can help warn other people against that or help recommend to them, here's the thing that worked for me. Or it might even be the case that some of you'll figure out is this wasn't a fit for what I needed, but based on what I know about you, you should maybe check this out, right? Maybe this different fit for different goal. You're more of a back-end person. You're more of a game developer person. You're more of a automation person, what have you. Once you kind of see that lens into it and you can recognize, again, that's not for me, maybe that's for somebody else, that becomes part of your being equipped as a teacher in recent stuff. Now, this includes part of the difficulty in navigating information. And this is especially, I think, true for the tech world, where obviously I spend all of my time and energy, but I suspect probably isn't unique to the tech world. There's this constant difficulty between there's stuff that is time-tested and proven and established. We see this even in the business sphere, right? I was looking at some books this morning, trying to understand some decisions about my business. And there's basically two categories of things. There's things that are time-tested and proven, but from 30 years ago. And then there's stuff that's new and fresh and recent, but not time-tested or proven. And this is kind of always going to be the tension of, you can try to learn a little bit from the old stuff, but you're going to have to kind of recontextualize it. You can try to figure out the new stuff, but it's not going to have that same evidence that it's going to last for decades. And so the only way, again, to tell for sure is to take your practice, getting yourself some, okay, I'm doing what I intend to do, pointing that at investigating some of these resources, trying some of the different methods, taking on some of the courses, moving through some of the steps, again, to help just see, is this fitting for you? I mentioned in Self-Command, that I've probably mentioned a few times in old videos on this channel, bird and donkey. It's this classical parable from philosophy. They often use another word for donkey that I don't like to say on my channel, because I know sometimes I have younger viewers or listeners or followers on Twitter and stuff from my time I've spent working with youth. But bird and donkey writes a story about different ways people frame it. The simplest way to look at it, I like, is that there's two bales of equally appetizing hay, equidistant from this donkey. The donkey is hungry, but it starves to death because it doesn't have a clear reason to start eating one of those or the other. They both look equally tasty and sensible and plenty, and so just dies standing there from not eating either. And this is often the case for our learning resources. Often our situation in the future while we're alive is that there's so many resources and options, many of which are good enough, maybe even great. And the only wrong choice between them is no choice, is to sit back and be like, well, I can't decide, so I won't do any of them. If you start down any of them, right, if that donkey would at least start eating either bay of hay by random whim, by chance, just by luck, by an arbitrary system, I'll start with the one on the left, I'll start with the first one I see, whatever. Well, then it might immediately figure out either, oh good, I'm glad I got this one, or it might figure out it's a little rancid on the inside, a little rotten, I'm going to wander over and try the other one. And the only wrong choice is to not make either, to not have any sort of motion going. So anyway, that was just the reference there about the bird and donkey. I find that so helpful for so many areas of life, of the only way to know is to start doing it. And many times you'll find is that any one of them would have been fine choice. This comes up too, people trying to figure out which game to make. And it's like, well, the wrong answer is sitting there thinking about a dozen. Because while somebody's thinking about a dozen ideas, somebody else working on one at a time and releasing them is getting ahead massively. Let's see here. Any other points to mention in here? Yeah, and again, the last bit I kind of brought up in here, right, is that the programming is one of these things, much like writing stories or like playing an instrument, where even after you learn the fundamentals, it is completely possible to spend your entire lifetime digging deeper to master even a fraction of what can be done with it, right? So it's not a realistic, fair, or reasonable objective to think of like, okay, well, first step one, I'll master all of C++ or JavaScript or Unity or Unreal or whatever. And it's really, okay, well, we got to start building stuff with it. We got to start doing something with it. And that's what's going to be useful to me, useful to others, help me get kind of some responsive feedback, some hindsight from what I've done with it. That otherwise you could very much spend your entire life off kind of just wandering, like if you were trying to figure out, well, I can't write a story till I've read every word in the dictionary, right? Till I mastered and memorized every single word. There's too many words. That's not how it works, right? Start to figure out what's the core you can build from, the foundations, count each block of progress of thing that you do or thing that you learn or thing that you put into practice as a step in the right direction, as a signal to yourself that you're moving, you've got motion, now you can course correct, now you can build on it. And to, again, not set such an unreasonable bar. That's just going to be setting yourself up for frustration and failure to think that, okay, well, I'm going to master all this, and then what will I do with it? Learn enough to start doing something with it. And this even includes, I'll even say to the point of teaching. I've brought this up a few times because there's different people out there who worry about, okay, I'd like to teach, help people learn stuff, but their problem is they don't say maybe have the amount of experience that I have. And what I often emphasize, right, is just like I mentioned earlier, there's old time-tested business books and engineering books that are 3 decades out of date. It's often the case that when someone wants to learn a platform right now, who they'd really like to hear from is someone who just learned it, right? Because they know that they're coming from a similar context. I have to sort of battle that of like, well, okay, I work with enough beginners that I'm working with them on their common questions about game development stuff. But for a lot of things out there, it's something where it's really beneficial for them to find out that they just recently on the current version of Unity or Reaper or Photoshop or whatever, found a way to do this thing that worked well for them or for the new version of Blender. And that helps them. They want that, right? They want that sense that this is best and you had the current resources, you had a current lay of the land, you knew what was out there, you found a thing that worked well enough for you. And I'll even say that again can make you in many ways, you can teach everybody who's at least a week or more behind you, right? They have the question, you found an answer, help them out. And that way too, you can be teaching as you do it. We've seen a lot of people have, I think, some decent success or growth off of this. So basically, while they're learning to do it, they're also sharing with others, here's my learning journey. And they don't even try to position themselves as an authority on it. It can just entirely be, I'm doing this, I'm figuring it out as I go, here's what I'm doing. One of our project leads in Home Team Lighthouse, Rodrigo's been posting these great tweets with like these videos of his gameplay on a weekly basis. The project's leading, that's releasing, actually I think next weekend, Robo Explorer. And it's just this really cool example of where it's showing like, okay, well I figured out this today and here's this thing I added next. And people love to see that, right? It's encouraging to them. It shows them how things come together in pieces. It helps them recognize how much this is very much, again, step by step, one step at a time. That's how it gets done. Anyway, I just want to reassure some folks out there that as you're trying to navigate these problems and you're like overwhelmed by the amount of information, by unsure if you can do it, by lack of belief, these are entirely common situations. There's not to take away from it, is to say that you are not alone in that boat. Everybody's struggling against this these days. It is the situation of the internet and all of its many ups and downs. There's a lot of stuff to try to navigate and make decisions between. And that's where, and again, I want to encourage selfcommand.com, my productivity audiobook, which includes the ebook if you prefer to read it and don't want to listen to me ramble more like I am here. That's something that if it's out of budget, there is information on the page of how to get it for free. Literally, if you volunteer, do a couple hours of good in the world, protest for a meaningful cause, etc. More information on that page. But really, is I think helping a lot of folks out there get their footing on, wasn't sure what to do, couldn't get myself to focus on one thing at a time, find myself kind of straying, getting distracted. And it's really this really simple, straightforward system that almost I think of like bumper boulder lanes. You know, if you start to veer off course, helps you course correct right back to what you're trying to do. I still use it despite the years I've spent doing this stuff. It's part of how I've been able to churn out so many videos, podcasts, books, content, games, etc. over the years. It's a thing that's been helpful to me, hopefully helpful to you as well. And I want to thank this guy for his email to help give me a topic to discuss today. Thanks, everybody, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.